Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, our third launch within our Aptem Enhance initiative, where we'll be covering the marking aid. So today's webinar will be delivered by myself and James from the Aptem product team, alongside Madeleine, who is the Head of Apprenticeship Operations and Transformations at Pareto, and Manjinder, who is the Chief Executive Officer at our partner Graide. Within today's webinar, we're going to recap Aptem Enhance, including our vision and the already live features available for use today, before we explore Pareto's experience on early adopter and beta trials, including the impact that they've had on their tutors and their learners. We'll then move into today's product launch portion, whereby we'll be introducing the marking aid feature via a fireside discussion before a feature exploration. And then at the end of this session, we will open the floor to questions from the audience. So please add these, as I said, in the questions panel as we go through. So just as a reminder, this information intends to convey our general product direction. This may be subject to change. So specific functionality that we're sharing is not a commitment to deliver, but it does show our intention. And this also applies to timelines presented. These are indicative and subject to change as we learn and gain valuable feedback from yourselves. So as an official introduction to today's webinar, Aptem Enhance is part of our Aptem Apprentice product, and that sits within our enterprise package. It's a set of features that have been created to automate apprenticeships, admin, and elevate that human impact. We're working towards a future where technology aids and supports human expertise, and it enriches that learner experience, supporting optimal provider operations. We've already delivered Aptem Checkpoint, Applied KSBs, and the virtual assistant as part of this. So Checkpoint is our objective measure of learner progress through multiple choice questions, which are based on the knowledge, skills, and behaviours of learners' apprenticeship standards. And this is helping to improve the confidence of learners while providing a clear insight into progress and where maybe further coaching is needed by tutors. We've since extended that functionality to incorporate scenario-based questions to give a greater understanding of the learner's ability to apply their learning to on-the-job situations that they may face within their working environments through our Applied KSBs feature. The Learner Virtual Assistant is also available for use and is designed to provide 24/7 support. It allows for personalised conversations between the learner and the assistant, and helps them to answer questions and present guidance on the learner's standard again, and when particularly they're not with their tutors in those formal sessions. This helps ensure that barriers to progressing are removed and that tutors' time is not taken with answering those same repetitive questions across their caseloads. So by taking care of that higher effort administrative tasks, our Aptem Enhance features help providers really cut through that noise and allows focus on increasing the quality of delivery, so elevating individual learners' experience and leading to those higher outcomes and achievements. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Maddie, who will take you through Pareto's experience of using these already live enhanced features, including being part of both our early adopter program and beta trials this year. So over to you, Maddie.
Thank you very much, and it's lovely to be here. So I will start with who are Pareto. So Pareto was founded in 1995, and we decided to expand into the apprenticeship sector in 2018, and that was to really complement the existing business that we had. We specialise in the sales sector as well as digital and management apprenticeships. We currently have around 650 to 700 learners across the 12 varied standards that we offer. A little bit about my role and my involvement with Aptem. So I am the Head of Operations and Transformation, which encompasses all of the delivery area, including the skills coaches, trainers, functional skills and learning support teams. I became the Aptem champion for Pareto when we launched the platform over 2 years ago, and I've immersed myself into the products as much as I can, and naturally I wanted to embrace any opportunities to be part of the early adopter trials. I'm continually looking at ways that we can enhance that learner experience whilst supporting our skills coaches to have more effective time with learners and reduce their admin time. So we've been involved in 2 early adopter trials to date. Being an early adopter means that we're part of the evolution of the product, which is just fantastic. And it gives us that head start on understanding the product and how we can use it best. This means that we can work collaboratively with Aptem, attending meetings with their product experts, providing our feedback and suggestions from testing the products on ways that it could be improved and to meet our needs. By being part of it from the start, that means that we have a much greater knowledge about its functionality, and we have that dedicated, enhanced support on the product, enabling us to launch it to the wider business with ease. We're able to ask our wider team who would like to be part of the working group, which is a fantastic opportunity for them. It supports their own development, and there's nothing better than getting the main user's feedback in that development stage. So the first product was Checkpoint. We took part in this trial from December 2023 right through its various iterations, which included the multiple choice questions as well as the scenario-based questions, until its launch in September 2024. We originally launched Checkpoint over more specific programs. Rather than having it across every program, we wanted to use it with some key skills coaches, and we added it to about 600 learners. What was fantastic to see that during that trial period, that we had over 2,000 checkpoints completed, which you can see there equates to nearly 4,000 questions, and a mixture of the theory-based questions and those scenario-based questions as well. We were able to provide feedback around when we would want the checkpoint to be triggered. So whether that be a manual option, which was really useful for us for when learners return from a break in learning and we're wanting to check that retention of knowledge before we start planning their return to learning. And also those coming close to endpoint assessment, so we can do that final check as to what coaching might need in those last few weeks, as well as the monthly trigger, or after work has been mapped by the coach, and that all depended on the design of our curriculum programs. So it was a fantastic opportunity to be able to feedback about how we would like that function to work for us. We've had lots of feedback from our learners that took part in some interviews with Aptem. Helps them focus on the aspects where they need to improve. Quick and easy, and a nice refresher. And I wish Checkpoint would have started earlier, as I loved being part of it. And I think that seeing that feedback is fantastic, and knowing that it's quick and easy and that they wish they'd had it sooner is music to our ears. So it was brilliant when we had the opportunity to be part of the virtual assistant trial as well. And this took place between July and September this year. This time we did actually add it to all of our learners. And as you can see there in its initial phase, we had our learners utilise it 251 times. The virtual assistant is themed around the knowledge and content support for their specific standards. But I've already discussed with Aptem how we would love it to be include things like maths and English, as well as EPA support, and how we can support learners as well with additional needs. So it's really great, again, not only to be part of that trial, but also to be able to influence further iterations of the product. The virtual assistant means that the learner can access that support without having to wait for a response to a message or an email or their next session with their coach. And that really supports those learners that may work shifts outside of our core working hours as well. They can get that response very quickly. Our coaches have been supporting learners to get to grips with the virtual assistant. Again, with anything new, they might not sort of see the benefit of it straight away. And we've got an example here where one of our skills coaches was with their learner, and they got the learner to test it out. And they said, let's ask the assistant to provide a cold call template based on being a sales executive in a building industry. And it worked. So asking it a very specific question, and they got that template. And they wanted to see how it would work with portfolio building. And I have had confirmation that that also worked. So I think you can see there that the benefits that that's had to that learner, and the confidence that learner will have now to being able to use it effectively. And I think one of the best things as well that we've got now is the fact that virtual assistant, you can see the history of all of the questions that the learners have asked. So you can go in when you're next meeting with that learner to see the kinds of things that they may be lacking some confidence in, or they may need some support in. So I've thoroughly enjoyed being part of these early adopter programs. I use Aptem every day, so it's great to work closely in wider development and improvement opportunities. Thank you.
Thanks, Maddie. It's really been a pleasure from our side as well, working so closely with you and your team on these trials, and it's great to see the impact that they're already having. Just a huge thank you for you and your team for being part of those and providing such great feedback for us. It's really helped. So that leads us nicely onto our next portion of the webinar, which is focused around our product launch of the upcoming feature, Marking Aid. So from our initial customer research earlier this year and previously last year, we found that tutors are currently spending the majority of their time marking. So some citing up to 50% of their time is spent marking learner evidence. It's often that this is at the expense of providing personalised support for learners, with those valuable conversations being missed due to not having the capacity. This has led us to an exciting partnership to work towards alleviating this issue for our customers. And we're going to talk through this in a bit of a fireside discussion now. I guess we can start with you, James, around an introduction of what led the product team to pursue a marking solution via a partnership, and also if you could cover what makes this partnership specifically able to deliver this feature.
Absolutely. We've talked to you all before on previous webinars about the importance of what we're investing in and to the research that we've done around what it is we planned to bring to market. Marking came out as a real no-brainer from the research and the benefits that it could provide into our providers and for the tutors in saving time. However, it was also one of the potentially largest investments we could possibly make in terms of time to market, time to value. It's also in an area that, let's be honest, Aptem hasn't done before. We haven't been in the marking or grading game in the past. So it initially meant that we were either going to go on a very long development journey that would give us really quite a long time to market, ultimately that puts our customers in a disadvantage because you then have to wait for that as well whilst you're experiencing these problems and these challenges around the time spent marking. But equally, we have to then go off and learn the domain. So I went out and spent a good deal of time researching and investigating a number of providers who we could either partner with or integrate with, including, and I won't mention them by name, but those that you're probably very familiar with are quite famous in industry. Ultimately, I found myself left quite disappointed until I came across Graide. So one of the things I really love about Graide and have been working with Manjinder and other colleagues over at Graide is just how open and engaged they have been since the start, with a real drive and thirst, not only to help and support us in partnership, but to help and support vocational learning, a space that's markedly underserved in terms of marking support and assessments. It operates differently to academia, and so many of the marking tools out there are really focused into that academic world more so than the vocational world. So we had a partner that not only wanted to work with us, they also wanted to work in the industry and wanted to develop the solution to meet the same goals that we wanted to. Ultimately, that's why it went out above and beyond anything else. But then we saw the solution, and it is incredible in its ability to do two things particularly. Not only is it AI supported, and therefore there are some efficiencies we can gain from that, it never loses sight of the human element. And that was something, as Paige said at the start of today's webinar, that's really important to us in terms of elevating that human impact. It's human in the loop approach to marking, not send it to a system, have it marked, have it come back to you hands off, which no doubt will have challenges and concerns as we head into the future around additional regulation. And we're already hearing regulating bodies expressing concern about that kind of approach. So it's kind of perfect. We have an AI solution that helps optimize, keeps the human in the loop, but also just adds to that overall quality and improvement of the marking consistency to learners. It was sort of every tick box in one. Now I'm very much selling this as a positive at the minute. It very much is. Doesn't mean it's all done. There's lots of bits of development to do, but again, that was another key thing for us, is that Graide wanted to do that with us. It wasn't, no, this is just off the shelf, have it as it is. They want to work through that feedback phase as well. It's really important to us to keep that going.
That's probably a great point to introduce Manjinder. So I guess, Manjinder, can you tell us a bit about Graide's journey so far in the AI space, and kind of why you then also decided to partner exclusively with us at Aptem?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you, James. It's always nice to hear. But a little bit about us. This journey sort of started whilst I was doing my PhD in theoretical physics. Programming, coding, doing lots of complicated maths, but also doing a lot of teaching and recognizing the pains associated with trying to give feedback to hundreds of students at scale. Obviously, I'm not the first person to experience this pain. Everybody on this call has experienced the same pain. But I was quite lucky because I had a team around me that had that technical experience, that understanding of educational technology to actually build something that would help. Over time, we increased the solution to go from maths to short text to essays, and growing bigger and bigger, and with the help of Aptem, even further. And it's been really an exciting journey because we've been able to show some really remarkable statistics. So we've been able to reduce the amount of time it takes to mark work by up to 89%, which is huge. So that can take your 5 hours down to less than 1. And we've also shown really high accuracy. So we've shown up to 99% accuracy. And of course, this is all happening, really importantly, in a system where all the data that goes in is only yours and nobody else's. One of the things that I care a lot about when using these types of technologies more effectively is making sure that we're doing it in a safe and ethical way that removes as much bias as possible. And when you deal with AI solutions right now, they take the entirety of the internet and they shove it into a machine that doesn't understand anything, and some things get output. Whereas what we do is we take only your students' responses, not like another apprenticeship provider's, only yours, create your bespoke models, and we do it really effectively, which is why it learns so quickly. And you can narrow down and identify exactly why things have happened as well. So you remove that bias aspect, you add in explainability, and it's just really, really useful at that point as well. Now, obviously, on the point of working with Aptem, at the end of the day, apprenticeship space is hard and it's under kind of funded, and there aren't that many tools that kind of focus on the nuances that apprenticeship providers need. Aptem is one of the few companies that actually does this and does it remarkably well. Because we could have thought about doing it ourselves. I want to do it. But at the end of the day, Aptem is a company that self-steers, has the autonomy to create the products, does the research, as you've seen working with Pareto, to actually build things that the market truly needs. You know, they've charted the course with this AI space really early, way earlier than anybody else, which shows their future thinking and their dedication to investment in the AI space. And you know, I'm a big believer of building things that actually provide value and aren't just like checkboxes. And the fact that, and I've seen it when we're working together, like we're developing new types of tech that specifically address those issues that apprenticeship providers are having that we would never have known about. But because of Aptem's of years of experience in this space and their continuous conversations with their customers, it allows us to create something that is really, really powerful for them. So it just makes me incredibly excited.
Thank you. It's really nice to hear that from both parties. So we'll go into a bit more detail later around the behind the scenes of Graide and how that will work, and the marketing aid and how that we plan on developing that. But I guess, James, from your vision of the partnership, how do you see that working from early adopter programs, involvement with our customers onwards, and how will that help towards the future iterations we already have planned?
Well, it's interesting because in ordinary terms, I never like the idea of having us developing something as a business and then having a third party who's developing something separately. And at the same time, you've also got a number of early adopters involved, and there's feedback going in all sorts of different directions. Who does what? When do they do it? It could be a recipe for chaos. But again, this comes back to selection. Like, why we chose Graide was they were open and really, really wanting that feedback early on. We haven't got to the point of having early adopters yet, but we've been working collaboratively, learning about how Graide works, learning how it integrates with Aptem. Huge support and help coming from Graide in how we do that, teaching us things that we didn't know. So to say the same point as Manjinder, we're telling Graide things, but we're getting the same thing back in terms of how assessments work, how grading works. LTI, now we know what LTI is, but a sort of big fundamental part of how it operates. There's a lot of standardization in that, a lot of help and support. And we're trying to give the same thing back in a more spirited partnership than we otherwise would, with a lot of integration between our development teams. So this is a human integration, if you will, working together, really helping to support each other. So I'm kind of buoyed by that, because what it really means is that we've on both sides got virtual teams that are working together. And so as we then bring early adopters in and start getting that feedback, as Maddie pointed out in terms of the feedback that Pareto gave as part of the checkpoint early adoption, and that ultimately being then manifested into the product as a result of that feedback, I'm really excited to get that feedback driven development in place. I'll talk a bit more about how we see that coming about later on, but we don't know everything. It's flattering to hear from Manjinder that we're helping from our history and our knowledge of industry and the research we've done, that they're getting value from that. But we still need to learn more. We know the fundamentals of what needs to be in place for marking. We are building those in place. We don't want to overdevelop and wait too long before we get that in a customer's hands. And the approach we took with Checkpoint as our very first early adopter product, we were showing our early adopters the designs, the concepts. We were getting feedback from that before we built it. It's sort of part and parcel of modern software development to do that, but it's not the world that we were necessarily used to operating in. And we've developed that and matured that approach such that now we sort of work development in sync with that feedback. And maybe even 2 weeks after you've given the feedback, something has improved in the product, something has changed. We're no longer on those long iterative cycles. We do work with a select number of early adopters. So Pareto was one in this case. We don't offer out early adoption to everybody. It is by selection. That's not because we don't want everybody. If we could accommodate everybody, we'd accommodate it. But it's a lot of time, and it's worth thinking about you as your business as well, because you have to contribute time to take through testing and to take through feedback sessions and to ultimately disrupt your status quo because there's something new coming along. So you have to work out whether you can do it as much as we have to work out if we can provide the support to you. And so we don't look for a large number. But what we then look to do in future is roll it out into a beta trial. So that's far more open access. If you want to get involved, you can. But that's sort of later stage. A lot of the key feedback has been given from those early adopters. We continue to gather the feedback through beta, but there's less of an engagement, and it's also less disruptive to your business. Ultimately, we get to the point of what we would call general availability. That's a long way of saying anyone can have it, because it's then available fully up to the standards that we want it to be. Obviously, it gets continued development over time, but it's sort of got its core function there and built from the feedback that we've learned from our customers. It has led ultimately to us putting together the roadmap in the way that we have. We're first focusing with the marking aid on how we get that the learner engagement and the tutor marking done, that's something fundamentally new, right? You've never been able to do that in Aptem before. Yes, you have always been able to submit evidence, but it would be an upload transfer sort of situation. And then the tutor comes along and works out how they're going to do their marking. Well, they probably download and do in some other system. We're bringing that all together and giving the offering there that learners can do it in Aptem. They don't have to leave Aptem to do it. They can actually type their answer into Aptem. We're leveraging Graide's capabilities here. The same with marking. It's all done as part of the same system. There's open, transparent value in what transits between. What comes next, though, we're going to need to look at feedback on how we administrate it. What changes can we put in place? So the future is not necessarily 100% known yet, but we're starting on that core journey. And I'm going to come on to it a little bit later, but we're also going to talk about something called Feedback Assistant, which you may or may not have seen on roadmaps to this point. Bit of a surprise, bit of a sprinkle of surprise coming in there as we talk about it later.
Cool. Thanks, James. I'm going to ask Maddie, do you have any first impressions on what James has spoken about there? Can you see that being embedded into Pareto's day-to-day operations?
Absolutely. I mean, it's very exciting and certainly music to my ears, as it will be for the delivery team and the quality team. I think marking learners' work is naturally a very important role, can be time consuming, and it can impact that time that you have with the learners, coaching them, and learners want their feedback quickly. I think as well, the fact that we need to demonstrate consistency in our feedback across our staff, we know that's something that Ofsted scrutinise. So I think that sounds like it's going to be really important, really helpful for us as a business. And I'm already thinking about some new staff that I've got starting that are new to the sort of apprenticeship education sector, and how this would actually help them learn best practice and get up to speed marking much faster. I think that it's going to ease the administration tasks and create efficient ways of working without reducing the quality of what we do. And that is obviously paramount to us. But the important question, where do I sign up for the trial?
Well, let me just get my clipboard out and I'll write your name down straight away. Honestly, Maddie, it would be lovely to have you on board. It's been great working with you throughout our previous 2 early adopter trials, and you're very welcome to come on board. I'll talk a little bit about kind of selection criteria. We know you, you know us now, so I can say confidently you'd be great to work with on this. And as I said before, it's not about picking only our favorites. It's not at all about that. It's just making sure that for both sides it's going to be a success. So we need to make sure that any early adopter is going to have the time to contribute, as well as the attitude and excitement for the change. But remember that change is a bit painful sometimes, and so you have to kind of be set up for that. Early adopter software is not fully finished, right? So you have to be in the right mindset to accept that. But also we have to be in the right frame as Aptem and as Graide working together here, that we're going to respond to that feedback quickly, so you're not left hanging. The one thing I would say about the marking aid, which is very different to anything else we've launched, it's new. We haven't had the ability to do this in Aptem before, so that's a significant process change over what you had before. Never mind the solution or the system that you have in place. I'm aware that some providers, they don't have a solution or system at all. It is literally just download, edit, save, re-upload, and mark it one way or the other as to whether someone has been referred or they've been accepted. That's moving from no system to a system, and there'll be variations between that, but don't underestimate that there will be some change as a result. And it's really exciting and positive change, but you have to be ready to make those operational changes too. We've certainly seen that with Pareto and some of the early adopter customers, as they found advantage through other things we've launched and being able to tweak and change how they approach things. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but this feedback is so incredibly important to us. We want a breadth of feedback. So whilst we are selective in our early adopters, we don't dismiss any particular part of our sector. Whilst this is a vertical sector, the concept of marking is somewhat horizontal within that sector. It's somewhat horizontal broadly, but particularly within the vertical niche that we find ourselves in, There are subtle variations on how a HE organization might seek to mark or grade within the apprenticeship realm versus how an independent training provider might seek to grade or mark. And that also then differs by the levels. So we want a good cross section. Don't think you'd be discounted. It's worth having a conversation with us. We can talk through what would make you a good candidate and what wouldn't. Because even if you don't come through to the selection for marking aid, we've got other things coming. So if nothing else, it's going to get you sort of set up, and you'll get pre-signed up to the beta trial as well. I think it's probably quite good at this point to start talking about the technology that underpins what we've got with the marking aid. I'd really like to bring us back to Manjinder so that he can take us through how it works, in a sense that you don't have to be a technical geek to understand it. He's got a fantastic way of presenting this and really clear understanding that will set you up for good stead when I then take you through the feature exploration later, so you understand some of how it works. So with that, over to you, Manjinder.
Thanks, James. So I think a really easy way to kind of look at this from the big picture is this flowchart. I appreciate it looks a little bit complicated, but don't worry, I'll walk my way through it. At the beginning, you're going to have the student response. That'll be submitted directly within Aptem, and it's then seen by an AI model. That AI model, of course, is built specifically for that type of assignment or that type of module, or however we kind of want to structure that. The key thing here is that the AI model not only suggests a predicted grade or a predicted outcome and the relevant feedback, but it also gives you an AI confidence. Now, this is really, really important because the confidence threshold allows the AI system to work with you hand in hand in that human in the loop system to be able to either accept that suggestion or reject it or edit it. And whatever you do there will be able to be updated in the future. So when you look at that confidence level, really the question that you're asking is that confidence high enough? If it is, then you can do your fast review, kind of just say, yep, that's right. And that's going to bolster the system. It's going to improve the confidence for similar responses moving forward. But if it's not, you do a more detailed review, you take your time, you look through everything in a little bit more detail, you update everything, and you train and update that model. So every single time what's happening is your students' responses are the ones that are building your models, which allows you to have this really nice, clean system removed from all the issues that you might expect in kind of these bigger model systems. And of course, at the end of it all, the student receives feedback through Aptem, again, having everything being one place, just making everything just so much smoother from an operational point of view. But in terms of how the actual AI itself works, I describe that in the next few slides. So let's start with a bit of like if we go back to the previous slide, please. If we start with a basic question, right? We've got some maths here, we've got some short text or some long form. Let's abstractify that, right? So, you could have different steps in a maths answer, you could have different phrases in a short text that you want to highlight or consider particular categories from a long form answer, like argument and content and spelling and grammar and all whatnot. We can abstractify that into having these gray dots, where going from one dot to the next is connecting those parts of the answer together. And each dot, in some sense, is an important part of an answer. Now, when you have this for one student, it's a line. It's not too complicated a line, but it is a line. But when we go to the next slide, we'll see that when you deal with your entire cohort, it's quite complicated because different students end up doing very similar things. So that's two nodes coming together, or they can then, from the same point, separate out and do completely different things. And the fact that they're coming together is actually down to teacher interpretation. So whether or not two things are the same, it's not whether or not they're identical, it's whether or not they're pedagogically identical. Do you care that they're actually the same when you're giving that feedback, right? So when you run through that loop that I was talking about before with this giant kind of mess, you get to the next slide, which is a much simpler network where your feedback and your marking is defining this kind of space, and you can see how many people are going and making what particular steps, and if it's a large number or a small number, and that affects the model. So that way, when a new answer comes in, it's already looking for, that good argument or that right calculation, or, the right reference points, etc., or the concepts. And it knows how a particular answer should be formed based off the back of your marking in the first place, which is what makes it so powerful. Every single question that is in the platform has its own model built off of your work, which will look like this under the hood, effectively, but with a lot more code, which allows us to be able to give you back feedback much more quicker. So that's in a nutshell, that's kind of how the Grades AI works.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Manjinder. We're going to the bit that I hope you've all been waiting for. So we're now going to talk about Marking Aid and what we're doing in terms of the features and functions here. I'm going to take you through a bit of a learner experience, a bit of a tutor experience, talk to you about some key benefits, and then some of the timelines. I'm excited. Hope you are too. Let's get started. So what are we looking at from in terms of learner experience and the benefits you'll drive here? We want to drive that learner engagement with an improved user experience. We want to provide learners with flexibility in completing their assignments iteratively. They can come back, they can keep going back, they can edit, they can tweak, they can change. And critically, one tool to start, complete, review, and submit all their assignments. They never have to leave Aptem. It's all part of the same system. Really, really particularly exciting is when we actually get to the point of submitting that assignment. So I'm part of my learning plan. I can always see my assignment progress just as I can today. I access those assignments directly from the learning plan. I get view and understanding what it is I'm expected to do, and I can start that assignment in sequence as I'm expected to. Critically, we then, of course, need to know exactly how we're going to operate. We get that assignment overview and guidance as to what they need to do, how many questions there are, the marks available, the number of attempts available. It's a focused assignment activity supporting the ability for them to save and return at their leisure. They're focused in on a specific task. They don't get distractions. It's again another key thing we had in Checkpoint. Actually completing the assignment itself is very exciting. We have the direct entry for an optimum experience where learners can flexibly author using text, images, files, and more to ultimately build out the answer to their question in the way that makes sense for them. They can ultimately preview it, save, return, can be done at any point. Submitting the assignment itself is, as you would expect, relatively simple. But the key thing is they can return to an in-progress assignment. So they can review, check through, maybe get some feedback from the virtual assistant as they're going through, and edit it prior to submitting that assignment. Make sure it's exactly right, at their own pace, done at their own time. Ultimately, when they've completed that assignment, very similar user experience, but they get potentially additional attempts post-submission. So if they have been referred back, they can restart from the same assignment. You don't need to replicate or duplicate. There's transparency of that submission and the status at all times throughout that journey. Moving over to the tutor side, the ultimate aim here is, of course, to minimize the time required to review and mark learner assignments. That's a key principle. We're also looking to provide the opportunity to standardize those assessment criteria for that consistency, fairness, and efficiency. It's all linked. It's all part of the same system. We know what that assignment is meant to be tracking and measuring, and we mark against it. We're ultimately empowering quality, accuracy, and the ability to moderate. It's at the heart of how this marking solution works. You can quality cross-section, you can moderate specific things. Actually marking. So very similar. You'll be familiar with this view. It's similar to the learner view. There's transparent view of that assignment status, and directly from Aptem and from the learning plan, you can access the assignment and begin your marking journey. Of course, it won't be the only way to do it, but critically, this is what we're starting with. Marking comes into a really pleasant user interface where we have pre-configured rubrics, so the standards against which that assignment was set, but also in reading through the response or the answer, however it may have been done, additional learning can be recorded and tracked as needed against the standards that are operated in as part of that program, allowing that flexibility to tutors. This is where AI comes in and is what great Manjinder was talking about. It's learning how you mark every single time you mark. And it ultimately gets to the point where it suggests, based on a confidence model, for your review. So you'll get high confidence versus low confidence, and it will continue to learn as you mark. As you correct it, you correct the AI, it corrects you along the way. It's incredibly exciting. Ultimately, you can get to the point where there's semi-automated marking, but the key point here is it's semi. There's always an involvement, human in the loop. It gets better and better over time. This is where you'll find your time saving. I have a bonus feature. I said I was going to. I hinted at it earlier on. We talked about Feedback Assistant as part of our overall enhanced roadmap. And you've kind of seen it along the way, but you have the ability to provide feedback, which is in context of answers, inline support, which is assistive and formative. It ultimately seeks to drive and uphold that quality bar that you're pushing forwards and benefits from all the same moderation and quality tools that exist within Graide today. Why did we do this? 75% of our customers who we surveyed in the industry said that a marking aid would either be helpful or very helpful. Big win. 72% anticipated time savings for tutors and admin staff. Bit different to the 89% that Manjinder shared before, but this was our research. 66% anticipated an increased quality of submissions on the basis of the solution we were putting together. Now, those numbers are fantastic. We think this is going to be transformative, but how do you get involved? We're actively underway with our development at the moment, and we're selecting early adopters. As we head into Q1 of 2025, we hope to bring to you our minimum viable product, or MVP. We'll release that to early adopters, and we'll have feedback-driven development along the way before we get to our minimum level product and ultimately release to beta trial customers. We'll continue that development through to general availability over time. Now is the time to get involved. Speak up. Say how you want to work with us. We will take your feedback, even if you aren't specifically involved in that early adopter selection. You could be part of the beta. We will have conversations with you. Research is really important to us here. So we want to work hand in glove with you as our customers here, as do Graide, and we'll make this product a fantastic success. We're going to move now into some Q&A. But before we do that, and whilst we get the questions coming in, I just want to refresh you on the enhanced plan overall. So we have checkpoint and checkpoint applied KSVs that we heard about earlier on from Maddie. Great, that's in production, that's available. You can take that today, it's generally available. The same is true with our virtual assistant. We're building that overall vision of Enhance together, and those two things are already in the works to work collaboratively together. So when a learner has completed their checkpoint, they can engage with the virtual assistant, and even the virtual assistant might engage proactively with them to see what they need help on the basis of their progress. We're now heading into Marking Aid and Feedback Assistant. Really excited to launch it to you today. We're well underway and very much looking forward to getting your hands on it early next year. So, Paige, I think you're leading our questions. What questions do we have for the group?
We do. I was just as a reminder, if you do want to ask a question, please pop it in the question panel now. There's quite a few coming in. I think we can probably start with one for Manjinder. Lots of providers are looking for ways to help with marking, as it's such a large proportion of time for our coaches. There are lots of products being released to aid this. What makes this solution different?
That's a fantastic question. And it's a really important one in the time that we're in right now. AI is a hot topic. I like to say that we were doing it before it's cool. We were founded in 2019. But let's talk a little bit about AI, shall we? So there are multiple types of AI. I think a lot of people that might have joined this conversation and might have thought generative or the tools like ChatGPT, Claude are the only types of artificial intelligence that there are. But there aren't. There's quite a few. But the two main ones really that we need to consider are classification AI systems and generative AI systems. Now, when I say to somebody, hey, look, you want to use technology to help solve some sort of task that you're doing, right? Well, what degree of risk are you willing to take and what is the importance of the task at hand that you're trying to implement technology with. If you're trying to make some toast, go ahead, use the fanciest AI-powered toaster in the universe, because the worst thing that can happen is you get some burnt toast. But if you're doing things that are important, like diagnosing diseases, giving feedback and marking, you need tools that have very low bias, if not no bias. They need explainability. Why are they doing the things that they're doing? And they need to be consistent. And I already sort of knew this from an architectural point of view with regards to the way generative AI works, but it's actually been quite interesting to see that the scientific research has actually caught up. There are multiple papers that actually show that there are significant consistency issues when it comes to using generative AI for marking. So if you say put in the same work and you ask it to mark the same thing twice, on average, like about 29% of the time, it will give the same mark, which is nowhere near the levels of consistency that you need for these types of systems. Like, that's just not okay. The second thing is the research also shows that it's bias. So you can tweak a few words here and there regarding socioeconomic statuses or class or race or gender, and they have dramatic consequences on the outcomes of the results. Short answer here really is that basically every provider that we're seeing coming out with these solutions are using some form of generative AI to do the marking. And that is the most dangerous thing that you could possibly do when it comes to this. Graide, on the other hand, is a bespoke classification system that only uses your data, and it does it ridiculously quickly, explainably, and consistently. And that's why these tools are really quite different. In the same way that a surgeon uses a scalpel, not a chainsaw, right? You have to use the right tool for the right job.
That's a relief. I'm glad that there's no chainsaws involved in surgery.
Great, thank you. That was really detailed. Maddie, this one's for you around how are Pareto helping tutors embrace AI and incorporate these new changes across the business as a whole?
Well, I think that there's no avoiding AI. It is the sign of the times. When you think that apprenticeship started back in the 15th century, we're now in the time of AI. So we have to embrace it for starters. We're supporting our trainers and coaches to incorporate emerging technological advancements, obviously like AI, into our learning content. I think being part of our Pareto's working groups for your trials, the staff are seeing that evolution of the products that I talked about before and how it supports their roles, and anything that is going to enhance their role, give them the time that they want to have desperately directly with the learners coaching them and less time on admin. So any AI feature is beneficial to them. So I think that everybody is embracing it because it is the sign of the times, I suppose.
Cool, thank you. Next, shall we go? Yeah, there's lots in there. Trying to pick where to go next. Let's go for this one. So when a tutor marks work, they develop a greater understanding about the person whose work they are marking. That's where the question stops, but I think that is, how do you make sure you don't lose that with these products?
I mean, I think I'll kick off, and then Manjinder can probably dip in. What we're really looking at in terms of the AI here is classification, as we talked about before. What are we looking at? We're looking for something, and we tell it already what we're looking for, but we tell it that by actually marking the first few assignments entirely on your own. The AI's got nothing to do with it. It learns what that provider is looking for, what that marker is looking for, so that ultimately then it can suggest over time. It absolutely never takes away that human element. There's always the ability to override what the AI says or add to what the AI completely missed. So it's very much about keeping the human in the loop. Maybe you want to add something more to that, Manjinder, but it's really important to keep in the loop.
Exactly. So the initial seed that you're planting is creating your own rubric to begin with. So that's allowing you to kind of format how you want to consider these assessments. And then when you're reviewing these assignments, you're seeing your feedback being applied in those situations, which effectively allows you to kind of fast summarize in your own viewpoint when you're looking at these. And the students' information is still available to see. So you actually get the ability to mark. When you're marking, you still get that benefit because you still see it as you would have marked it, because you either accept or reject it or update it. So that you still get that connection.
I'm going to follow on from that one around how does moderation or standardization work then? Is the AI model shared between all tutors marking a particular qualification or apprenticeship standard?
It's actually closer to think about it slightly differently. Think about the assignment itself. Now, that assignment belongs to a learning plan, which belongs to a program. Within that program, who knows how many tutors there are? That there could be one, there could be 100. So it's looking at the assignment itself. And if there's 10 assignments as part of a learning plan, it will look at each of those assignments individually, because each one is going to have different things you're looking for. Each one has different standards associated to. So it's looking at that assignment level. Now, there are ways that you can look at it as, I only want it to, I don't know why you do this because you lose a bit of power here, but you could say, I only want one tutor to mark this. The reality is you have multiple people marking the same from the same set. So actually you build up that standardization and also flexibility. It's weird. You standardize, but also at the same time allow for personal touch, because you have multiple people marking the same assignment set, that it learns on the whole how your organization should mark, which approves standardization of how tutors mark, but also flexes that within the human element. That was quite a long, wordy way of answering the question, but I hope that made sense.
This might also help clarify. So there's another question around, you mentioned that the tool learns on marking style. Is that on the user or the organizational level, or both?
Fundamentally both. It's mass though, depending on how many. If you only have one marker, it's only going to mark in the way that marker marks. If you have multiple, it's obviously going to be a blend of that, and that's, I guess, a deliberate bias. Like, it's not even bias at that point, it's just data standardization. So it's going to kick out outliers and it's going to refine towards the middle ground, but it's never going to override you. So if you do want to go off on a different tangent, you can, but you'll be able to then see sort of behind the scenes, oh, I've got tutor A seems to mark far kinder than the AI is telling it to, but also far kinder than tutor B. So you can kind of then also look at a quality bar that way, and then work with those tutors on how they mark.
Cool. Another one here, I think this again is a bit of a clarification. So would assignments need to be added to Aptem as a SCORM asset or form within the component for it to be marked correctly, or would marking aids still work with PDFs or Word documents that are submitted?
Gosh. So I'll answer the last question first, because it's a yes, no. Yes, you can still upload PDFs. You can still upload images. However, we're going to recommend, as you run through this, that you don't. This is one of the things I was talking about in terms of operational change. You'll get the most value and benefit in a number of ways out of shifting that so that learners actually write their answer into the question within the system itself. It's a huge advantage from that. I mean, go into that in more detail, but that probably leads me to the first point, which is no, it's not a SCORM asset. We can form it from SCORM assets in that we can build that out with you and we can understand how you want to build it, but you're actually building this as a fundamentally new part of Aptem. It's not a SCORM asset, it's not a form, it's not a learning plan component as it was. This is brand new, whole holistic functionality that allows you to put questions and assignments in place.
Thank you. There was another question there around, is this just for the assignment component, which I think James has just answered with that one as well. This one, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name the system that they have, so I'll just ignore that bit. Would the marking aid submission of the assignments negate the need to use other systems that are quite well known?
Yes. Sorry, let's talk. Whoever submitted that question, reach out to your CSM. Let's have a conversation where we're not in a public forum.
Cool. That was that one. When will the marking aid be available for all training providers?
So all going well, we're looking at the end of Q2 next year. That does depend on the feedback we get throughout beta trial and throughout the early adopter process. It might be sooner, might be slightly later, but realm of end of Q2, sometime in Q3 next year, there's general availability to everybody.
Cool. There are still some coming in, so I'm going to keep going until a couple of minutes before we're due to end. Is the marking aid contingent on the module being mapped to the KSBs, or can it work on mapping solely to the question?
Yes, it can. It could do both. We'll recommend, of course, that you have that as part of your module configuration within the learning plan, because that just makes your life easier. But yes, you can at any point add additional KSBs that have been met. And so as a result of that, it means you don't need to pre-map anything if you don't want to, but you'll get the best efficiency, the best bang for your buck if you do.
Will it also detect AI generated content? Will it disable built-in browser AI tools?
It feels like a Manjinder.
Yeah, it's a bit of a me question. So it's a natively there won't be any blocking of external kind of browser applications, as far as I know from my conversations with James and the product team. There is actually quite an interesting point here that's happening, which is, how are we dealing with the interface of students using generative AI to, unreasonably submit assignments that aren't authentic to them. And on top of that, the standard kind of plagiarism issues and copyright issues that kind of already exist. So on that front, we actually have a tool built in within Graide that we're looking at kind of adding into Aptem in the slightly longer term, which allows you to look at the history of how a student has submitted that work, which is why James was suggesting that we transition all of your submissions directly into Graide, the marking aid, sorry. Because what you can do here is you can actually see how the student has formulated that response. You can see what they've written, what they've deleted, what they've edited. And as a result of that, you can very quickly find out when somebody just copies and pastes a generative AI response, edits a few things, and submits it. So that allows you to have a dialogue with the student from an academic integrity point of view, rather than just pointing fingers using a standard AI detection system, which the research has actually shown is biased and has really high false positive rates, which again kind of boils down to the previous thing that I was talking about really using the right AI tool for the right thing. And on the kind of more standard plagiarism front, rather than just AI gillerism, we are actually looking at adding in a plagiarism solution. So that could be something that could happen in the future, but I don't want to make any promises. That is definitely something that's in the works.
Great, thank you. We are just about to run out of time, so I'm going to leave it there today. If we didn't get to your questions, we will follow up afterwards. If we could just share the last slide again, that would be great. So I just wanted to say thank you for our guests for joining. We really hoped you enjoyed hearing about the marking aid and about the Aptem Enhance features and how they're already benefiting customers like Pareto. We're continuing to work towards that vision of combining technology with the human expertise and really enrich those learner experiences and drive that quality. If you are interested, as James mentioned, we are actively recruiting for early adopter customers for the marking aid to work alongside us and provide that feedback to ensure we deliver our intended value with this product. If you're an existing customer, please reach out via your CSM. And if you're not currently a customer, please use the QR code below to register your interest and we will get in touch. We really look forward to starting to gather that feedback and continue working closely with our customers. We'll get back to the questions as I mentioned, but thank you very much for joining today. I hope you will have a lovely rest of the day.
Thanks everyone. Bye.